the supermarket. So we thought, we really need to cover this because it's something that is so important, and yet maybe it gets neglected. You can have lots of things for the mind, but what about the rest of us? It's holistic. So Magnus Mulliner, this is what he does. He's worked for years with fitness and sport and nutrition, and he's going to share with us today some ways to live, some steps towards making a difference. So I think this is so important, and it's great that he's here. So give a big round of applause, please, for Magnus Mulliner.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me at the back? Can you see me at the back? It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for showing up. As you know, this presentation wouldn't be the same if you weren't here, so I do appreciate you being here. How would you people like to practice a little bit more peace in this moment now? Would that serve? And then we can progress on to DBP, Death by PowerPoint. Is that okay? Do I have your permission to do that? Thank you. What I'd like you to do is to ground yourself, feet on the floor. If you can, maintain spinal integrity. That means, well, they say straight back, but your back isn't straight. If it was, you'd have brain damage. And a choice, you can either keep your eyes open or you can close your eyes. And all I want you to do, and your hands can just be on your lap or by the side, is to focus on your breath. Now, for some of you, if you're not sure what's moving, it's an invite. Put your right hand on your chest, next to your heart, and your left hand on your stomach. And just become aware of what's moving or what isn't moving as you breathe. So as you breathe in through your nose and out through your nose, just notice the sensation of cool air coming in and warmer air leaving. And just breathe. And like a little puppy dog, it runs off, because that's what the mind does. And just bring it back again to the breath. And while you're doing this, I'll just remind you that if you would like to improve your quality of life, up to 70% of all diseases are related to your breathing. It costs you nothing to just spend a moment and sit down, hopefully in a quiet place, and just focus on your breath. Coming in and going out, or white light coming in, black smoke leaving. And just focus on your breath. Keep breathing. And maybe you may notice a sensation as your right hand moves forward. And maybe your left hand may move forward too, if you've got your hands on your chest and your stomach. Keep breathing. Okay, in your own time, you can open your eyes. What do you see? Somebody training to be in the Chippendales? Now, what I'm going to go through on my PowerPoint presentation is I'm just going to remind you some things that you may have forgotten. And it's easy to forget. And the reason for that is because we have a television and we read newspapers. I'm not saying that's wrong. But it is an invite, perhaps, to tune out and maybe to tune into something else. In other words, to fill your mind, all the Buddhists say the mind is here, with maybe something that's of interest to you, which is your passion. And the reason for standing here like this isn't per se to make a statement about frack-free in Lancashire, which is where my wife and I and our children presently reside, but it's more to do with, well, what will you think about me? What judgments came up for you? Some people laughed, and some of you perhaps thought, oh my God. Maybe some of you thought, well, if my husband wears those shorts, well, he'll have a body like that. Let it go. Okay? I would like to change the energy once again in the room, and thank you for partaking in that. I'll ask questions later. Here's the family. I had more hair then, as you can see. Okay. If it's okay with you, what I'd like you to do is to stand up, have a little bit of space, if you can stand up. I mean, stay seated if you want, and just put your hands forward like this. And with your hands forward like this, what I want you to do is just to copy what I'm going to do, if that's okay. And we will together change the energy in the room. Sit down, please. Thanks. Together, we just changed the energy once again, and you did that, so I congratulate you. Most of you are going to tune into the words that I'm saying, but what the invite is for you to listen to that which you cannot hear, which hopefully resonates through me, because that's far more important. Because what I'm going to share with you is what I know, but what I don't know is far greater. Would you agree with that? Yeah? That's what I want you to tune into. And some of you might be thinking, what's he talking about? So let me give you an example. If I had 3 police ladies walk along this stage and I told you that one of them carried a gun, which one? Do you think you could tell which one carried the gun? Yeah? Hands up if you think you could. Yeah? They didn't tell you though, did they? That's an ancient form of communication through how they were, their presence. That's what I'd like you to tune into, even though I'm going to go through this presentation. Does that make sense? Yeah? We're on the same page. I did say DBP, Death by PowerPoint. What I'd like you to do is what would you ultimately like to receive from this presentation? I realize didactically I can stand here and deliver this material, but really all of you come here wanting to receive something. It's different energy to getting something. Yeah, but you'd like to receive something, and normally what I'd do is have a flip chart and hopefully cater to as many people as possible. But just be open to this. Is it okay if I ask you people questions? Is that okay? Yes? Thanks. Is it okay if I challenge some of your beliefs and or values on life? Is that okay too? Yeah? You've got open minds and open hearts? Is that right? I'm not saying I'm right and you're wrong. Is that okay? We're going to delve far down a rabbit hole. It is an invite for you to come with me. But ultimately, I do not want you to buy into any of my BS. That's belief systems for those that were confused with those. Yeah? I do not want you to buy into that. I want you to find your truth. As Lao Tzu once said, the truth cannot be said if it's said, it's not the truth. So I want you to find your truth in what I'm going to present. Or I should say, what I'm going to remind you. And the context is loving reminders. As I said before, I'm not going to teach you anything. I will remind you that which you have forgotten. And it is so easy because we are products of our environment. All of us are. Question, how many of you people are happy with the way you look and feel? Hands up, be honest. Yeah? Some of you looking around thinking, well, should I put my hand up or not? That's okay. Isn't it interesting how we all go out of our way to gain approval from those that don't even have it anyway? Interesting. Unfortunately, as a former academic, I like to present learning outcomes. Now, I'm not going to insult your intelligence because you're all well-educated people. Did you know that being serious kills passion? But worse than that, it kills people. That's why we're in Afghanistan and other places doing misdemeanors. So I don't want to be serious all the time, but the information I'm going to present could be like, let it go. So the main thing I've got on here is misled and misfed BS. You understand? Remind me, what does BS stand for? Thank you, belief systems. Fuel for the brain, creative movement. What I wanted to do was to leave you with some movements that you could do, which would, again, increase your quality of life. However, I realised we're quite restricted. So later on, when I finish my presentation, if you want, I will practice a few of them. More Qigong, Tai Chi movements. No doubt some of you practice it. Again, if you want to increase your quality of life, it's about the movement. Some people it's fast, some it's slow. An example was what we previously did before with the meditation. Some of you felt peace and harmony, and some of you felt really energized with the clapping. Everyone's an individual, everyone's different, and what works for them. I don't want to swear at you when I say this, but this is the key. It's about taking responsibility. Most of us learned helplessness when we go to, say, perhaps a doctor or some other specialist, and, hello, I'm broken, can you fix me? You're not broken, you don't need fixing. You might not be happy with certain things in your life, but you yourself are required to make some new distinctions or changes. Would you agree with that? Yeah? We are hopefully going to have some fun. I'll present the question now to the men. I want you to think about what is the most important 6 inches. That's a question for the men. And we will come back to the answer to that later on. But men, just think about it now. That was another joke without humour. I like to present homework, and please understand this. The reason why I teach what I teach is because I'm required to learn it. That's why I teach it. If you look at a martial arts expert, the reason why they pass it on and teach it is so they get better at it. So this really is for the benefit of Magnus, whoever he is. However, some of you may also pick up wonderful gifts and also practices to see what works best for you. Some of you men, you need to take your eyes off me and focus on this. You know, saying that, we live in a democratic society, so this has just popped into my head right now. And I want you to be honest. I'm going to ask you a question, and without getting too cerebral about it, let's vote. How many of you people present in the room, and put your hands up if you want me to do this, would like me to put my clothes on? Put your hands up now. Be honest. So the majority would rather I stay naked. Thanks. I don't know what that says about me or that says about you, but we'll leave that. Right, foundational pathways. These are just words. Gandhi once said, become the change you want to see in the world. Let's bring it closer to home. What I would like you to do is to become the change you want to see in you. Most people present in this room are likely to be living, and I'm making this up, only you know if it's truthful, you're living somebody else's dream and not your own. You may be climbing a corporate ladder. You may be chasing a paycheck. I'm not saying those things are wrong, but ultimately you're not happy. You don't wake up in the morning and think, I can't wait to get to work. Maybe some of you are. But for those of you who are not, it's an invite to find out what your true passion or purpose is. Because when you do, there'll probably be less bad words on television and more peace in the world. Good old Schopenhauer. Again, I'm not going to insult your intelligence and necessarily read everything that's on the slide. I made this statement before. We're all products of our environment. However, most of us have designed a lifestyle around our own pathology. What do I mean? You go to see a doctor, and I think doctors are beautiful people. I really do. I'm not anti-anything. I think they're doing it right. I just don't think they're doing the right thing. And one of the reasons for that is because they're not ultimately, in a lot of cases, finding the etiology or root cause of what your health challenges may be, which stem from mental, emotional, intuitive, and spiritual levels of reality as well. But they think that the body's separate. Okay. 3 out of 4 Americans have a chronic diagnosable disease. I don't think the stats are much better in the UK. However, whatever state you're in, you are teaching others that it's okay to be in that state. And I said before, Shakespeare says it well, there's nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. Because as Westerners, we're so good at labeling things, aren't we? You're fat, you're skinny, you're an alcoholic. And with that is a meaning. Who's read the book, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl? Put your hands up. If you haven't, it's an invite to read it. Great book. Prisoner in Auschwitz, but 1 in 25 people survived it. So what made that 1 in 25 different? They had a meaning. whilst they were in Auschwitz, because they wanted to make a difference when it ended. But for those that didn't, why am I here, Lord? Why am I suffering? Gas chamber. But for those that had a reason for surviving, they would then share their message. 1 in 25. Now, I can't relate to what went on there, but I get to hear it wasn't good. Most people are put on here, wait to become disabled before they do something. So what do I mean by that? Their left foot falls off, or they get a rash, or they have a headache every single Monday, and they wonder, oh, well, just take a pill. But you and I know that your headache wasn't caused by the absence of an aspirin. Would you agree with that? Yeah? So what was the root cause of it? Well, most cases, it's dehydration. So here's another invite. How much water are you drinking daily? And in most cases, if you are not hydrating this, then you may perhaps, with magnesium deficiency and other things, which 80% of the population are, may create something like a headache. I've never had one in my life. Yes, I've had other challenges to overcome, but I've never had a headache. So I can't empathize with anyone that has. However, all pain is a teacher of life. It gives you that wonderful opportunity to make some new distinctions. So another reminder, if you have any sort of discomfort or pain in your body right now, or if it exists, such a thing as the past, if it had a voice, what would it be asking you to do? What would it be telling you to do? And you tap into your own doctor and find out. Because, like the journey is, you find more about who you are. It's never a destination. These are what I've themed as the 8 foundational pathways to, do you like that play on words, that healthy, heal thy? Yeah? Heal, I just came up with that one. I thought it was quite cool. I'm going to touch on all of these, and in the time, and as I say, remind you those things which you might not read about in the Daily Mail, but it is an opportunity for you to perhaps read or look at or spend time with other people that raise your frequency. So from a quantum physics point of view, we are just vibrations of light. Again, is that true? Find out if you want to. It's an invite. One of my big passions, and what I really like, is the metabolic typing, or a diet. No diet really works because we're all individuals. Biochemically, we're all different. So, as it clearly states, one man's food is another man's poison. You could be consuming some healthy local foods, but they don't actually work for you. How do you know? Because your body's telling you, but you were told it was healthy for you. So again, another invite to check in with yourself. Sleep, absolutely essential, affecting hormones and everything. Now, some of the things I deal with are called fundamental homeostatic controls, and those are things like the pH of your body, your autonomic nervous system, your sterohormonal balances, and there's about 12 of them. And ultimately, if they're not in balance, equals a disease. So wouldn't it make sense to find out what it is? And then you're empowered to make the necessary changes. Sunlight. I have done a few YouTube recordings even on sun gazing. It's an invite, first hour or last hour. I do enjoy it when we can, but bearing in mind I live in Lancashire. Clouds, etc. Not always a good idea or conducive for sun gazing. Again, I'm not going to insult your intelligence reading these things, but what you're required to do is to expose at least 60% of your body to the sun. And again, it isn't an invite for when it's between 10 and 2. And most of us have been told, well, that's the time when you can burn yourself. Everyone's different with the skin type to what works for them. It might only be 5 minutes out in the sun. It might only be 10. Certainly do not burn yourself. But the sun has never been the enemy. And there is some research to show, actually, it's the carcinogenic chemicals we put on. So as a quick reminder, never apply anything to the biggest organ on your body, which is your correct answer, unless you would eat it. That's interesting. So if you wouldn't do that, don't do that. Does that make sense? Okay. We've suddenly left all the makeup behind. You're beautiful without it anyway. Yes, there are foods that also contain it. This is an interesting one, and again, backed by research. 77% of all cancers. Now, this is a topic in its own, and Mark Devlin will tell you, it's another passion of mine. Cancer's actually not a disease. It is a symptom. It's actually, in my opinion, a survival mechanism, and it's something that we create by making poor lifestyle or environmental choices, and I will go into that as we go through the presentation. Now, some of that might come as a shock, say, well, no, it is a disease and so on. That's fine, but you have given me permission to challenge some of your beliefs and values of what a disease is. Further information, bedtime reading, grassroots health, and vitamin D council. Now this is something, show of hands, how many people actually spend time out in Mother Nature, grounding themselves, walking on grass, sand, and so on? Hands up, show me. You guys are beautiful, and you know I love you all. That's brilliant, because that in itself is very healing. There's been a few books on earthing, and if you haven't read them, again, it's an invite to practice it, because I've been on, can I say this? Yeah, Western Supermare just the other day. Didn't know this was going to happen. Showed up at a friend's, we were at college together, and they were going with the family to Western Supermare. So there I was walking on the sand, and we were there for hours, and I felt so good. And guess what? I hadn't had any food from 8:30 in the morning until, it's not often, but 10 o'clock at night. And all I had, I'm going to be honest with you, was an ice cream. But I asked which had the most amount of fat in it, and there was no gluten. But that's the only thing I had. Yes, I had drunk water throughout the day. So when you start giving your body what it requires, you can have this, who's heard of the term, hands up, intermittent fasting. Have you heard of that? Where you don't give your body, how do you feel doing that? Research shows up to 85% of men can do that, but it might be more challenging for women because of their hormones. Maybe 25% it works for and the rest it doesn't. Again, find out what works best for you. The research is very clear with mice and rats. Intermittent fasting will improve your quality of life. It's not necessarily how long you live, up to 120, 130 years. Oh, how many of you, when I said that, suddenly went, I don't think so. Check it out. Find out if that's truthful. Because your reality might be when you're 60, 70, you're bent over double with a Zimmer frame. Okay, that's one reality. I give them a time period on that, 45 minutes. And these are other examples that may or may not work for you. Now, if, like me, you're quite masculine, then meditation will work for you. I can sit down, that little puppy that goes off and I didn't make that phone call, I need to bring it back. I can do that. But for some of you in your feminine, and I'm talking about the energy, it could be a man who's in his feminine, maybe a guided meditation will better serve you. You need to find what modality works best for you. Is that okay? So if meditation doesn't work for you, plug in with something and go through a guided meditation and bring that chattering monkey down. The chattering monkey is a thing which could be labeled as your ego. It's a perception of who you think you are, and you're so much more than that. Deep rhythmic breathing we've touched on. You've done that. It costs you nothing. Find the peace that passeth all understanding. I think that was a quote from Jesus. Who's heard that before? Is that true? Where your intention goes, energy flows. Would you agree with that? What your attention and intention is, but you don't want it in your life, and it grows. So the invite, again, is just to be aware of the glasses, I use that as metaphorically, that you are wearing and focusing on. It's not right, it's not wrong. Does it serve you and the greater good, humanity? If it doesn't, change your glasses. You can do that. I mentioned, I touched on before about the dream that you're living, the real passion, and also loving skills that you may have. I've got to be honest, I phone a friend or ask the audience when it comes to DIY. My wife did buy me a drill, and I sometimes use it, but really that's not where my forte is. I would rather get my brother around to fix things for me. So the journey is then to find out who is Magnus and what works for him. And something like this does, because all I am doing you is being a conduit and reminding you things. That's as I see it. Is that true? What and how you focus and how you move. I mentioned before, from doing the meditation and then from doing the clapping, you will know how you felt. So these are the two main factors that determine how you feel in any one moment. What you picture in your mind, what you tell yourself on a regular basis, where your intention go, energy will fall. That, in my opinion, is a fact. Check it out, find out. And a lot of people, and it is a term that Paul Chek gave me, a lot of people have this stinking thinking going on. You will know this, that most people, when they die with regret. If only I had. Why didn't I tell them that I love them? I should have spent more time with them. Game over. And there are a few that went, whew, I'm ready to meet you. Bring it on. Did I ever give? Was I ever of service to? Because unfortunately, in this thinking world, which is obviously based on fear, what can I get out of this? Unconsciously, because we've created the money paradigm we're presently in, and those may be your thoughts. Become aware. It may not be. And a lot of it actually is ancestral from a survival point of view. But most of us, well, all of us in the room are conscious, so we can go beyond this to a different level. And here's an invite. Reminds me of an elevator. If you imagine you go into an elevator and you want to find out your level of consciousness. So you push the button and you go up. But just before you go up, you can see down below there's a lot of FUs, there's a lot of people shooting and killing one another, and that's their level of reality. You can think of a few places in the world where this goes on. But your level of consciousness is higher. Please understand, I'm not saying it's any better in the way of I'm a more spiritual being. All I'm saying, that's a level of reality that they're at. But because of your level of consciousness, you move up to the next level. Next level, you see a lot of people running around being of service to others, but not themselves. Again, not a genius formula, necessarily, because they're neglecting the physical, which is a part, obviously, of this body, receiving what they do, but your level of consciousness is higher, so you move up. And the thing is, you look above, and people are having a party up there, and they're saying, come on, up you come. There's a 360 degree, and the music's fantastic, but you and I are stuck where we are. Not right, not wrong. Does it serve us? So, because of the fact there is more space up there, fewer people, Osho reckons 1 in 6 billion perhaps then reach enlightenment in who they are in that moment. And that's beautiful. We have that opportunity to do that. Satoris are great, if you haven't done a Satori or illumination intensive. So I'd say it's always an invite to become conscious and to wake up. And I keep telling myself, and the other thing is, do not take life too, I nearly swore, seriously. It was never meant to be, okay? How many of you people have heard the expression that one day you can look back and laugh on that situation, one day? Has anyone heard that? Hands up if you have. Why are you bloody waiting? Do it now! Yeah, seriously, what's you waiting for? All waiting causes suffering. Do it now. Yeah? What is funny about that situation? You might say, well, Magnus, somebody died. Okay, again, what could you learn from them? What did they teach you? Check in and find out. Yeah? There's always a smarter, more empowering question. You won't know this, but you've got some more homework on here. If you want to. Who's heard of Memetics? Who's read Richard Dawkins' book, A Selfish Gene? Hands up. Another invite. Memetics, French word from meme, rhymes with cream. It's to copy. So, wait, this is beautiful. Happiness is a cigar called... Oh, my word! Sorry. It's a little bit loud. I'll put it down here. Thank you. The last time that was shown was in 1992. But even now you remembered it. That is a memetic. 1992. I'm showing my age. Frightening, isn't it? 44 years young. That's how young I am. A memetic. And there are lots of others that go on. Just become aware of them. And if they serve you, hold on to them, but release them. We have all been programmed, indoctrinated by the late Dr. Stephen Covey would say our social mirror. Does that connect with your environment? All of us have. And it's like that virus. It has infected, as you know, a lot of people. I don't believe there are any conspiracies going on. As a former academic, it's either fact or it's fiction. People doing the best they can with what they understand in the moment to keep that roof over their head. Keeping their so-called dream alive. Wars going, you know these things go on. But we want to come up with solutions. It's not about ignoring anything. So how do you remove the so-called stinking thinking that's going on, if it's going on? Here's another invite. When you first wake up in the morning, how many of you people go... Okay, next question. How many of you sing when you're having a shower? Beautiful. You don't care what others think of you, do you? You just do it. Yeah, you're not doing it for anyone else. You're just doing it. And it probably sounds beautiful. I just sat outside there. There was this young man. He was 17 years young. And all he was doing was sitting there playing his music. It was beautiful. Fantastic in that moment just to switch off. These are some more empowering questions that you could perhaps ask yourself as part of your homework. So one of the things is, if you are not smiling or singing in the morning, what questions could you write down and perhaps put into your mind that would make you feel good? Because when you feel good, it gives others permission to feel good too. Does that make sense? Yeah? You don't need to be on stage to teach. Just by showing up, you are teaching. We've touched on what's funny about that, I hadn't noticed. breathe. So the first thing we spoke about was to do with light and grounding. The next thing we do is thinking. The next thing, which is just vital, is breathing. And if you don't, after about 5 minutes, you start to die. And if you look at somebody who is, or spend any time with a person who is leaving this dimension, very shallow breathing, very chest breathing. They're not massaging the internal organs, the diaphragm's not moving. It's down here. So as a quick reminder, for those that did choose to put their hands at the top and the bottom, this should have expanded. Now, from a pranayamic breathing point of view, there might be 12 points, but we're just going to focus here on this one here and then the chest. So sitting down or lying down in your own time, expand your chest. 2/3 of your lungs are there, 1/3 is there. So the invite is for you to practice it. Why? Because it makes you feel good and it relaxes you. In fact, you cannot have a domestic with another if you are breathing fully and deeply. Check it out. Is that true? So breathing costs you nothing. You obviously need it. But believe it or not, it can affect the pH of your body, which is vitally important. What is the normal pH of the body? 7.45. Right. Well, you can affect that and your autonomic nervous system. If you are a mouth breather because you may have parasite problems, your nose is bunged up, you are stressing your body. Breathing in and out through your nose taps into the parasympathetic as opposed to the sympathetic. Yin and yang, balance. So you can relax, breathe through your nose, and feel better. Now, I know we have all these labels with all the diseases, Westerners and so on, but in all honesty, there only is one disease. You're either healthy or you're not. And if you're not healthy, I know it as molecular chaos. So if I get a chain and I pull it, what's going to break? The weakest link. So in your body, if you are deficient in certain nutrients, then the body perhaps can't get any oxygen in. Houston, we have a problem. It then may metastasize into cancer. But cancer, and I'll make this statement here, has never killed anyone of anything. No, Magnus, that's not true. Again, check this out. Cancer certainly will form. However, usually on the label when the person passes away is pneumonia or organ failure or some other label. The cancer, if you didn't get it, you would die anyway. So the cancer has given you an opportunity to make the necessary distinctions in your life. But for some people, well, the research is quite clear, ongoing at Harvard University. Cardiac doctors, given their patients 6 months to live, unless they make the necessary changes in their life, what did they need to do? Eat properly, get to bed on time, stop smoking, stop drinking. Whatever they had to do was right for them. Here's my question, for those that haven't heard a previous presentation of mine. What percentage of people in this study, which is ongoing, chose to listen to their cardiac doctor and make the necessary changes? Throw out some percentages. 20%. Higher or lower? 10? 2? 60% chose to listen to their doctor. Anything else? 95% chose to die. 5% chose to listen to their doctor. And when they interviewed the families and said, hello, what's going on there? Without their chips and all the rest of it, I'm just using those metaphorically, they've got no reason to live. Interesting. A man without a passion or a purpose is like a ship without a rudder. Where's he trying to go? Interesting. So even with death, I mean, most people actually fear living than dying, but my point is that they didn't want to make those changes. Life is a choice, but they were that addicted. What do I mean by an addiction? Let me clarify this. It's a repeated process that does not gain your desired results. So I'm not saying if you smoke, you're addicted. I'm not saying if you drink every day, you're addicted. You know what your addictions are. It could be to animals, to your car, to sex, to whatever it is. I'll be honest with one of my addictions is exercise. It's about balance, everything in our lives. But 95% chose to die. Interesting. So there are only two ways of creating a disease. I want to keep this as simple as I can from my point of view, without going too much into the biochemistry. Toxicity. So we all know, if we're as mad as a hatter, how did that come about? Because the millers were putting the mercury around the hat and in their mouths. Yeah? So we know that toxins are going to cause all sorts of problems, and you may know of individuals who have got aluminium poisoning and mercury. Not natural, totally toxic. There's two forms of, there's ethyl and methyl mercury. They're both toxic, but all of a sudden when they're on a vaccine, it's okay. Another invite. I don't think so. It's there as an adjunct to keep the thing in suspension. That's another topic I present on vaccinations. Never been proven to be safe, never been proven to be effective. Again, do your homework on that, please. So the other fact is nutrient deficiency. So if I said to you that somebody, and you'll know this because we're all limeys, if we were deficient in vitamin C, what could we co-create? Scurvy, absolutely. If we were deficient in B1, what could we co-create? Beriberi, absolutely. If we were deficient in vitamin D, rickets, depression. Now, so we know that if we are deficient, so I am telling you here and now that no disease is a drug deficiency. Would you agree with me? I'm not saying don't take your drugs or your meds. I'm not saying that. But I am telling you that if you are on any meds or any other drugs made by Big Pharma, let me remind you, there are 561,000 patented pharmaceutical drugs, of which zero heal you of anything. Yes, some of them have their place, but most of them are extracts from plants anyway. Oh, white willow bark forms an aspirin. Well, maybe you want to take that and not have the side effects. It kills over 20,000 people every single year, just popping a simple aspirin. Peptic bleeding, hemorrhagic bleeding, everyone's different. But understand that all disease starts in the first brain, which is the gut. All disease. So you can't have a label without having some compromisation going on here. Unless it's a toxin. If you haven't found out about metabolic typing, again, it's another invite. There was a book written by Bill Walcott and Trish Fahey. Talks about the metabolic typing diet. It's not a diet. He had to call it a diet to get the publishers to produce the book. It's a lifestyle. No one diet works for anyone. Further researchers, Weston A. Price, Major General McCarrison. Who's heard of these characters? Weston A. Price. Hands up. Who's heard of Weston A. Price? Some of you? Okay. Hands up. Who's heard of Major General McCarrison? Just one lady. And how many of you heard of Dr. Francis Marion Pottinger? Okay, who's heard of the Pottinger cat studies? Right, just one lady over there. Okay. Just Google any of these people. Weston A. Price was a dentist, traveled around the globe, indigenous populations, and discovered, he actually went on a mission thinking that the most healthy diet was a vegetarian diet. I'm not here to say that it isn't, but he thought that's what it was. And he traveled around, Inuit tribe, Kentia, South America, went over to see people in remote Swiss areas, all over the globe, because at this time we didn't really have the planes. Well, you had to go on donkey to get to some of these places, except the Inuit tribe, which obviously in the far cold regions in the north. But everyone that they found, those that were eating their indigenous foods that they'd been eating for generations, they didn't even have a label for cancer or coronary heart disease. It didn't exist until white man's food came to town, and we'll touch on that in a moment. And if you just Google Weston A. Price, he's taken pictures of people's dentures, and you can see them. So when they're like healthy, what they look like in the rule of thirds, and those that aren't, where the teeth are falling out. It's not just about the teeth. The body works as a whole, as you know. Major General McCarrison was a skilled surgeon, and in the war, he realized or was told that between 48 and 51% of the American and British troops were suffering from malnutrition. Okay? So what's going on there? So what he did is he tested the Hunza tribe, North Pakistan, their diet. And he found that the rats lived to ripe old ages, no problem, unless the mum lay on the baby. However, as soon as he introduced white man's food, within 14 days, the rats were killing one another, which is no different to a British soccer match if you look what goes on in the stands. Would you agree with that? I'm not anything about soccer, okay? Dr. Mary Francis Pottinger was a great researcher, but he studied over 900 cats between 1932 and 1942, and you couldn't do this kind of research today. But what he found is the cats that ate their raw foods and raw milk were fine. In fact, their poop, things were growing in it on one side. Those that were fed heated meat and pasteurized milk, dead dysfunctional, anything goes past your eyes, unless you've got a bow and arrow, you probably want to leave it alone. And what he found is that the ones that were fed denatured foods were not able to reproduce beyond their fourth generation. What generation are you in now from that which is pesticides, herbicides have gone in eating dead, dysfunctional, denatured products, of which 95% are sold in Tesco's, Morrison's, and Asda? Interesting. Because manufacturers are only interested in three things. How does it taste? What's the texture like? Can we produce it, mass produce it? Because remember this, if nothing else, remember this here now. Anything with a shelf life does not have a self-life. Would you agree with that? Yeah? Because you are a living being. So whatever you put in has got to be alive. Because if it isn't, it will become so. In other words, To be absorbed, digested, assimilated, then eliminated, it will cost more than it delivers to you. As an example, we'll touch on it. Sugar, which is a Class A drug, I kid you not. 4 times more addictive than crack cocaine. So ubiquitous and socially acceptable. Corporations, we've touched on. So now, I'm not here to doom and gloom because that's not what it's about. It's about empowering you people to make smarter choices. If you haven't read the book, read Wheat Belly by Dr. William Davis, who's a cardiologist. Wheat Belly. Great book. And he talks about the staff of life 2,000 years ago, which is einkorn wheat, which has 14 chromosomes, genome A. He then talks about it changing into emmer wheat, E-M-M-E-R, which has 28 chromosomes, genome A and B. We have 46 in the human body. It then was hybridized in the 50s and 60s 1,500 times to form triticale estivum, which is a dwarf wheat, which is in all our bread, pasta, cereals. 42 chromosomes, genome A, B, and D. Okay, here's the deal. Not once has it been safely tested for human consumption. Is that true? Find out. Read the book, Wheat Belly. So anything that's grown in a grass really is not really sufficient for our metabolism. The reason why our brains are as big as they are, although there is some research showing that it's shrinking, is because of the fat and protein we ate. And that's been going on for over 2 million years. Don't believe me? Read the book Primal Body, Primal Mind by Nora Gagaudis. Primal Body, Primal Mind. She's not taking, and it goes beyond the paleo diet. Beyond the paleo diet. Sugar we touched on before. One teaspoon, if you haven't read this, Professor John Yudkin, his book has been re-released. I got it a couple of years ago from the library. It took 3 weeks to get it. I went on to Amazon, £400 to buy it. Thought, okay. Professor Robert Lustig, who does a lot of work over in the US working with obese kids, a champion for sugar, being such a bad Class A drug, has had the book re-released, so you can buy it cheaply. And if you read it, the research was written in 1972. It goes into detail about sugar and the effects. Now, who's heard of Ansel Keys? Hands up. Ansel Keys, in the 50s, saturated fat is causing coronary heart disease. If you read the Daily Moan, it has been in recently. I know that because my parents, thank you for that, gave me the article. And it has been on The Men That Made Us Fat on, I think, BBC television. And what happened is, have I got the loudest voice? Well, Ansel Keys in the 50s, there was 22 countries, of which he hand-selected 6, to prove the hypothesis that saturated fat is causing coronary heart disease. Remember what Disraeli said? There are lies, damn lies, and statistics. We can use it to our benefit. But Professor John Yudkin, his voice wasn't as loud, so he wasn't heard. But he said, no, it's not. It's not the saturated fat that's making us fat. It's actually the sugar. But he was not loud enough. And so the corporations jumped on the bandwagon, and that's why we've got low-fat diet products and all the rest of it. Well, look how it's working for us. Look at the disease rates going up and up and up. Now, it's not just down to one thing. It's like cancer. It's multifaceted. There are many reasons to it, as we talked about, toxicity and deficiency. Please remember that because it's in your exam. You can't leave here until you've done the exam. Just checking your job. Anything with we talked about that. Actions now to remove the above products from your home. So for most of you, when you wake up in the morning, you open your cupboard and you see Kellogg's. Now, anyone that feeds that to your kids, trust me, I'm not a doctor. You are a serial killer. But that's C-E-R-E-A-L, if you feed it to your kids. And I mean that, and I'm being very serious. There's nothing, in fact, if you eat the cardboard, which it's contained in, there's probably more nutrients in that than there is in the box. Do your homework, find out. Because 1, 2, 3, and 4 are called white man's foods, which lead to white man's diseases. And if we went back to Weston A. Price, he found as soon as white man's food came to town, the disease rates went up. And then they started coming and labeling things with cancer and coronary heart disease. But what was interesting is the research done by Major General McCarrison with those rats was the exact percentages of rats that were dying with cancer, coronary heart disease, and all the rest of it mimic that of the British and American population at the time. Do we need to do any more research? Who funds it? So anything, as I mentioned, that's pasteurized, it's been denatured. Yes, it has a shelf life, but you won't get the calcium from the milk, or very little of it. And obviously enzymes means life. You need enzymes to break down lactose. And for most of us, because it has no enzymes and bacteria, we can't really fully utilize it. So if you want to stock up on your greens, you'll get more calcium from that. Just steam them. Cruciferous vegetables. So there's an alternative. Gluten, I'm not saying gluten-free is necessarily any better either, because it usually contains a Class A drug. processed salt. So Celtic, Himalayan, Hawaiian, those are better salts to make. You guys probably know this. Contains over 80 minerals and trace elements. Salt is good. It won't affect badly your autonomic nervous system as long as it's not processed. And then I've just created some others. You've heard of GMO. Another joke without humor, or genetically engineered GE. But most of it actually is fed to the animals. And even in this country, if you do think universally or think globally but act locally, get to know your farmers and find out how they're treating their animals, what they put on their crops, etc. Because, if I'm not mistaken, ruminants are meant to consume grass, not grains. They have 4 stomachs. Fermentation process breaks it down with the enzymes. So most of their calories in cows is actually from 70% comes from fat that they produce from eating grass. However, we have one stomach that produces hydrochloric acid, and it's there to break down the proteins. Interesting. We know about soya is totally dysfunctional. Don't believe me, read the book by Dr. Kayla Daniels, that's 2 A's in it, and it's called The Soy Story. She delves into detail about it and talks about how it came about, because it's seen as a wonder health food. No, miso, tempo, or natto may be okay as a condiment, not as a main meal, because they're fermented. So the phytates are released, and a lot of the other mineral blockers that slow down the thyroid as well as containing a small amount of aluminium, which has never been healthy for us. GMO, sweeteners. Throw out, what do you know as sweeteners? Aspartame, Splenda, sorbitol, asulfame. Sorry? Now, that is a good sweetener, and Indians have been using it for generations. A little bit of an aftertaste, so again, an invite. If you have a sweet tooth, then get some stevia. Some of you may be okay with xylitol. Anything with ends in OSE or OL or IN is a sugar. And remember, 1 teaspoon of sugar, 1 teaspoon will compromise your immune system by up to 50% for 6 hours. So if you've got 16 of them in a can of Coke, oh dear, hormones, neurotransmitters have gone through the roof. Honey, locally, is okay. It's still got a high glycemic index. The idea for you to perpetuate your youth and your longevity and quality of life is to control one major hormone called leptin. It's stored in your fat cells. Okay, but for most people, the signal from the brain to it has been lost, so you carry on eating. And so the ghrelin, which is another hormone, essentially, the heard of the gremlins, ghrelin, that tells you when to eat. At 10 o'clock last night, my gremlins were going, please have some food. So if they're out, yes, it will activate insulin. But the primary role of insulin is not to lower your blood sugar. It will do that, but the primary role is to store nutrients. So if you do not control your blood sugar from eating grains, GI of 72, sucrose is between 59 and 65, then obviously you are aging before your time. So you need to control blood sugar. And processed oils, canola oil, saffron, vegetable oils, margarines, 1 cell difference between that and plastic. You can make smarter choices. In fact, for the women, if you want your husbands to fall back in love with you, go and buy some butter. Is that true? Find out. Thinking it's a healthy food. Margarine, it never has been. It was forced upon you. Petroleum back in the 20s, or even slightly before that, Rockefeller. That's another time for another discussion. Margarine is not cool. What actions will you take now to remove the above products? Well, again, it's a choice to not open your drawer and pull out the Kellogg's. What could you have for breakfast? Well, what have we been eating for generations? What did your great-grandmother consume? Porridge, absolutely. But here's the invite. Whatever you choose to consume, rotate it 3 or 4 days. It takes 72 hours for every cell in your body. You've got up to 100 trillion cells in your body. You've got between 23 and 25,000 genes, yeah? They've all got a shopping list. What do they require? They don't require porridge every morning. And the thing, if you feed me porridge, I'm hungry within about an hour. More of my hair's falling out. Why? Because it's got more carbohydrates. I need more fat and protein, so I put coconut oil in it. I'll sprout some nuts. Men are good at this. Sprout your nuts overnight, put them in a cup. That went over everyone's head. Yeah. Nuts, soak them, sprout them, leave them in a cup, release that. It'll release the phytates and the mycotoxins, which are produced by fungi. So all nuts and seeds contain fungi. We know that because they use them in concentration in biological chemical warfare. You don't want that on your nuts and your seeds, so soak them. wisdom, form of the wisdom of how we used to eat our foods. So yeah, porridge. So if you had porridge on Monday, you then don't have it till Friday. So what are you going to have on Tuesday? You could have eggs, absolutely. And again, rotate. Have about some avocado. That's plenty of fat in there. So let me tell you here and now, fat does not make you fat. I'll make that statement again. Maybe it didn't land for people because that's not the dogma in the program we've got. Fat does not make you fat unless it's a trans fat. Would you agree on that? And or a PUFA, a polyunsaturated fatty acid, which is not stable. So an example would be if you've got some olive oil and it's in a glass bottle, it says organic, but it's clear. Don't buy it. Because sunlight will change the structure of it. So again, it's an invite to find better oils. It should be totally opaque and it should be in a cool environment. Otherwise, the structure changes. You'll know this, every single oil has a smoking point. Once you go beyond that smoking point, it becomes rancid and fetid and carcinogenic. So an example with olive oil, it's not got a high smoking point, but if you cooked with it and it cooled down, is it then liquid or solid once you finish cooking with it? If it's solid, you've gone beyond the smoking point. It's now rancid and fetid. So a better invite would be things like ghee, lard, butter, coconut oil. These are far higher smoking points. Or put some turmeric, great for reducing inflammations and increasing the macrophages, in your olive oil if you insist in cooking with that. But there are smarter choices to make with the oil side, because fat does not make you fat, people. Most of my diet is 70% fat and protein, and guess what? I've had no food this morning. Why? Because I'm not hungry. I'm choosing not to. Yes, I have had some caffeine with butter in it, and I took some choline just to keep my neurotransmitters or acetylcholine in balance. There's other choices you can make. I don't want anyone to copy what I do. I want them to find their truth. Can I move on from this slide, yeah? You can get a copy of these anyway. People say you are what you eat. That is not true. If I fed all of you the same food and then I did a stool analysis of what came out up to 72 hours later, your poop would be different. It would have smelled differently, maybe not have an earthy smell. So that tells me that your first brain, and they say up to 85% of our well-being is determined by the bacteria in there if it's in balance. So you should have 85% good, 15 not so good. So what comes out is obviously just as important to some extent. We don't normally talk about stools because we're British, so we'll leave that behind. And sometimes I'm full of that as well. So that's why you need to find your truth. You know this. There are 0 essential carbohydrates on the planet, and there's a reason for that, because there are none. I'm not saying don't eat your seasonal vegetables, absolutely. Just think about, do I need to eat some blueberries during winter? Probably wasn't part of the staple diet. So the invite is for you to eat more fat and protein, perhaps, because the key fuel, and it's in your exam, so remember this, because you remember the exam paper I told you about, primary fuel for the body is actually ketones, breakdown of fat. That's what fuels this and that. But for 99% of the population, they're running it on glucose. How's that working for you? You become inflamed in various areas. Fat accumulates depending on your dominant endocrine system in different parts of the body for different people. If you know Jennifer Lopez, all her weight is around her bottom. Gonadal system. For some people, if your dominant endocrine system is thyroid, then you find weight around here. Everyone's different. But any excess weight means you are suffering from malnutrition. You're inflamed. I form no judgments with that, but obviously what you're doing is not working for you. So you need to make the necessary changes if you want to improve your quality of life. It's an invite to the degree that your health equals pleasure. 2 motivators in life, pain and pleasure. We go out of our way to avoid one and to find the other. Intermittent fasting we touched on before. I've been told the time period, so I've got to move on here. Does that quote make sense to you? Look at the percentage of what's in a human body. Can anyone see big pharmaceutical drugs equal 3%? Is that missing on there? No. Interesting. So we go to somebody with our learned helplessness to treat our symptoms that we have created by making poor lifestyle environmental choices because of our learned helplessness, and they give me a toxic chemical which challenges my liver and probably other organs in the body. But guess what? My symptom has gone away, but then the body gives you another one later on because of tachyphylactis. Tachyphylactis means drug resistance. That means that if you put on a drug to lower your cholesterol or given a statin or whatever, then your body will kick into action and go, well, hold on, it's got a high cholesterol reading for a reason, although that doesn't necessarily lead to coronary heart disease. Again, we've been misled and misfed on that one. So understand, yes, it can lead to Alzheimer's and other, but don't worry, those are just side effects. Trust me, there are no side effects in life. There are only effects. Don't be mistaken. It's like you and I are going over the front line and we're being shot at by the Americans. That's called friendly fire. What's friendly about it? Can somebody tell me? But it's the label that goes with it. Oh, it's okay then. It's just a mistake. Everything happens exactly on time. Essential. Absolutely key. And these are some points to it. Avoid caffeine after 1 p.m. And the reason I say that is because it does have a half-life, and you will not go into a deep delta sleep if you have caffeine in your system, and or sugar for that matter. Creative movement. Some people call it an exercise. X is a has-been, size is something you don't want to become. A play on words. Well, my point is, what creative movement could you do that works for you? For some of you, it will be yoga. For some of you, it might be Pilates, Tai Chi. It might be cycling. It might be running. Find the modality that works for you, that you enjoy doing. Because we are all spiritual beings having a human experience. This is just a transport mechanism to get me from A to B. So I'm going to take care of it because I would like to improve my quality of life. That's the reason why I teach this, so I can continue doing that, keep reminding myself. Sperm count. If you've got your mobile phone in your pocket, that'll do it. That'll reduce your sperm count too. If you don't know about electromagnetic frequencies, read the book Disconnect by Dr. Deborah Davis. Disconnect. I found out the other day in Kendal, where I was born, they're actually going to have free Wi-Fi. That means they're going to light up the whole of the town with free Wi-Fi. Whoa. What's that about? Corporations. Again, no conspiracy. Yes, makes sense. We've talked about that. Did you know there are over 80,000 man-made toxins on the planet, of which about 10% have been tested and over 80% are seen to be carcinogenic? But you can control it. So summarizing what I've gone through, ultimately how you think, breathe, drink, eat, sleep, and undertake creative movement on a daily basis will determine your quality of life. That, in my opinion, or those are facts. So if you can spend some more time in Mother Nature or a place that brings harmony to you. And as I mentioned before, life is a choice. But most of us, because of our indoctrinations, are running on our parents' programming, doing what they did because they told us, and they did the best they could with the tools they had. But guess what? It isn't working for us. Because the only constant in this world is impermanence. Nothing stays the same. So who you are when you started listening to me, although you're trying to tune into that which I'm not telling you, you're not the same person now. So in order to heal the body, you need to accept, allow, and support. It's not about war on cancer. Quick fast track, 1971. Nixon, not very popular because of the Vietnam War. We're going to have a war on cancer. 5 years, we'll have a cure. 40-odd years later, it's gone from 8th, 9th leading cause of death to number 1 between 45 and 73. If I'd put 76 billion, over 76 billion into the war on cancer, and it's gone from 8, 9 to first position, that's called a failure in my opinion. So where's the money going? What's going on there? It doesn't work. It never works. You work. They're looking in the wrong place ultimately. It's like if I lose my car keys and I'm going to pay the government and scientists to find my car keys. We're still looking for it 40-odd years later. You've got people running around in pink leotards thinking they're raising money and doing a good thing. No, you're not. You're just keeping the disease alive because they'll never, ever find a cure for cancer because they're looking in the wrong place. Yes, they'll have stronger drugs and more side effects. Thank you. But trust me, you're worth it. It's not about treating the symptoms, of which cancer is one. It's about going to find the etiology or root cause. And if that's your journey, then that's your journey.
We need to close, Magnus.
Thank you. What would you like to leave behind you're taking with you? TV channels, they're free to get access to. You probably know, I can't believe I've had an hour, because normally it's 3 hours. I would like to say I do value your time and understanding. For some of you, if I didn't quite tune in with your mental, emotional, intuitive, or spiritual level of reality, in other words, I wasn't able to connect with you, that's okay. We'll be around to answer any questions and what have you, but thank you very much for just being yourselves. Namaste.
Magnus Mulliner, thank you very much. Thank you so much. Oh, it's important, isn't it? Fantastic.